What's up, family? It's been a while. It's actually been since I'll give or take, beginning of April, give or take, since I've been intentional and consistent around posting content to either YouTube or on Instagram. Actually, in April, I actually said this. All right. So I was talking to my therapist last week, and I was expressing to her my disappointment in myself around the pacing and the amount of content I haven't been producing for like T2E and for some of the other shows and ideas I have. And at the same rate in which I produce things for like in the banking and credit union space. And so we were talking through um, some of the reasons for that. And she made some interesting observations that I just hadn't thought about. One, in particular, she mentioned some of the older videos, like where I had the arcade machines behind me, where I was just kind of just talking and going off there. She said, "You were drinking each time when you first started really talking on Instagram. You had a glass of brown liquor in your hand, and that liquor may have been giving you some courage to kind of just loosen up your inhibitions." Maybe she was on to something, right? And actually, let me not make light of alcohol and its use. For some people, they struggle with it. I personally don't struggle with it. For me, it's more like a ritualistic thing. Kind of gets me warmed up, gets me loose to kind of let go of my self consciousness that I have. So let me just pause for a second and say, my therapist did not tell me to drink. I just cut off that video at a weird spot. Here I am, roughly about 2 months later, and life happens, and work happens, and priorities happen, and you can easily lose track of your long-term goals that you set for yourself. Goals that push you further, goals that you set at the beginning of the year, goals that if you did not do them, nobody would really notice because they're only goals that you set for yourself. You're still paying your bills, you're taking care of your kids, you're taking care of life, and you're happy. But there are other things that you want for your life that you want to continue progressing on. And those things have a tendency, or at least in my life, they were pulling me at every end. And I found myself, for a matter of about 2 months, getting in front of the camera, not liking what I was doing, not liking the process, and flat out not feeling like creating. Let me show you what that looks like. Mic check, 1 2 1 2. 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 Mic check, mic check, mic check, mic check, 1 2 1 2. 2 1 2. Mic check. Test shot 1 2. Test shot 1 2. This is the motivating light. I actually added a little blue tint to it. So this next episode of Transition to Entrepreneurship, we're going to talk about being stuck, and I'm going to outline where we're planning on. So in this episode of Transition to Entrepreneurship, we're going to talk about what it means to be stuck as an entrepreneur, and then In this next episode of Transition to Entrepreneurship, we're going to talk about what it means to be stuck as an entrepreneur and how to get out of that. And then also I'm going to discuss how we're going to move forward with the channel. Why did I just show that? Where I think I made my biggest mistake is that I found myself looking at other creators' content and comparing how well they're able to create a beautiful story in a very succinct and coherent manner where they didn't ramble like I do, and where they had all this beautiful color, illustrations, all these things. And what I was boxing myself into is comparing myself to folks that frankly do this for a living. This is not what I do for a living. This is something that I just picked up, and I wasn't affording myself the grace to grow. And I was, as opposed to me looking at those creators' content and looking at where they are now, where I started making the shift is I started looking at some of the stuff they were making 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I looked at their progression and I said to myself, wait a minute. When they first got started, they were just on the camera talking. And I'm like, why can't I just be comfortable with getting the information that I need to get out, that I feel is valuable, without all the bells and whistles? And that's what I needed to do. I needed to reframe my expectations and reframe my expectations in line with my capacity. Because although I wasn't creating for Transition to Entrepreneurship or for this other show, for what it's worth, I was still working. Let's talk about board terminations and board succession. Going into 2020, we all should have done some kind. Thank you, Chris, and thanks to our session sponsor, Credit Union Employee Healthcare. Here's the thing about all that, and that's all well and good. But what can happen in life, or specifically as an entrepreneur, if you're successful in one area, you can find yourself plateauing, and you can find yourself getting complacent to the chagrin of the goals you say you have. So say, for example, you're an entrepreneur, you're able to pay your bills, you're able to, go on vacations, things of that nature, but you have your eyes on making your first meal in a year or something along those lines. You don't get there doing the same things that you've always done. You have to add additional skills. You have to add additional products, additional services. And in some ways, it forces you to retool the factory, so to speak. And it's so easy to fall back into the complacency of the things that you know how to do and the things that come easy to you. And here's the thing that I think about a lot is that a lot of the goals that I have, and maybe that you have, you'll eventually get to them. But when? Meaning, I'm 40 years old, and the goals that some of my long-term goals, nobody would think twice or complain or have anything to say if I got to them at 50, But for me, though, the things that I want to do for other people in my life, there's no promise that they'll even be here or be able to enjoy them to the extent that they'd be able to enjoy them if I wait another 10 years. Just say, for example, I have a dream. I want to buy my dad a boat, man. I really do. I would love to buy my daddy a boat so he can go fishing. I can say, well, I can get it. I can get to it when I get to it, right? 10 years, daddy's still moving around, things of that nature. But wouldn't he enjoy it much more if I can get to it a little bit faster, if I just worked a little bit harder? Or maybe there's some organization that I could support better, more financially, that needs the money now if I just squeezed a little bit more, worked a little bit harder. I mean, there was a time when working at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning was a thing for me all the time. Now it's not something I do hardly ever. And I'm not one of these people that believe that everything has to be hustle, 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 hustle. You got to have balance, but that balance has to come in line with the pace of your own goals and dreams. So if you have big goals and dreams, you can't have everything. You can't have all that sleep. You can't have all that relaxation if you want to accomplish those things within a certain time frame. In closing, it's important for us all to take time to reflect and relax and take time for yourself to heal and just kind of recuperate. But it's also important to know that we were all sent here with a purpose and a unique gift that nobody else has. And with your gift, you have the ability to impact your life, your friend's life, and your family's life.